Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Women Talking Money podcast. My name is Gretchen from Magenta Financial Planning, and today I'm joined by Nick Elston. Nick is an award-winning inspirational speaker and founder of Forging People, specialising in mental health engagement and transformational speaking coaching. Known for his impactful talks and workshops, Nick empowers individuals and organisations to harness their stories and speak with confidence. His expertise extends to financial well-being, where he explores the connection between mental health and financial stability. So welcome, Nick, and thank you for joining me today.
Thank you very much. I'm going to take you with me everywhere I go now. That was the best build-up ever. Thank you.
So I was going to say, do you want to add a little bit more to that for our listeners and, tell them a little bit more about what you do rather than my biography reading?
I'm not actually sure I can, to be honest. Yeah, so I guess the LinkedIn header is inspirational speaker on the lived experience of mental health. And the first question is, it is a proper job, I promise you. It's been my job for the past decade. And simply I share my experiences of mental illness and mental health challenges. As you mentioned, of course, finances come into that as well, to help increase engagement. So I'm not a coach or a counsellor or a trainer or a guru. You wouldn't want that in your life, trust me. Far too empathic for that, just agree with everybody. But for me, that gap is the engagement piece. And we've had this conversation before. Why is it that when people need help, we don't reach out for help? And I guess I get drafted in to reach to people that don't tend to be engaged by this stuff. So again, not specifically, but generally, men could be one of those, given your theme of Men's Month. That can be one of those demographics. So I work in those kind of environments. With my speaking coach cap on, it's not presentation skills, as you're about to bear witness to. It's about changing our narrative to change our experiences in life. And I do this in the prison system. I do this in schools, as well as businesses as well. The ability and the power that it has to deliver any messages with clarity and power and emotion, to be able to share our personal experiences, for me, that's the perfect vehicle to increase engagement. And that's what I try and do in the space that you dominate.
So, we have spoken before, and I know that, there's been various challenges throughout, your earlier life and no doubt things that we all have to continue to contend with in our lives. But normally where we start this is take it back a little bit further to try and understand a little bit more about maybe how you were brought up with money, or, the memories that you have about money in your family. So what was your experience there in early sort of childhood?
The experience actually wasn't an experience until a point, and that point was when my dad and then my family decided to launch a family business. So before that, actually, we weren't well off, but we weren't on the poor side of things either. We were just okay, like everybody else was in kind of my demographic where I lived. It turned really toxic when actually the business was launched. And for quite a while, it became a very successful business. So we had a bigger house, we had bigger trappings, we had all the things, and it was brilliant at the time. I then left school at 16 to join the family business. And it was then did it kind of really take a turn with my relationship with money, because the business actually ceased trading. There was redundancies of family friends. There was a divorce of my parents. There were other things around kind of issues around infidelity and alcohol and lots of different things that were going on. And to me, the association that I made was money calls this. Without the money, this wouldn't have happened. And it really changed my relationship with money in a very negative way. And I think anybody that's ever come from a toxic environment or relationship with something, you'll know that there's two ways of going back on that. You'll either completely rebel against it, or you become completely passive. And I really rebelled against it. So I was always using money as an outlet. So all of my income would go on all the time. And it was very much see it, spend it. If I can get more, I spend it. And that started that pursuit of happiness in the pursuit of things and experiences, and also very dubious distraction techniques. And we'll leave that for another session. This could turn into therapy very quickly, so I will leave it there.
and I'm certainly not a great therapist, so it's not my skill set. And that's really interesting. So and did it seem like in all of that sort of deterioration almost, where things were going wrong for the business and for your family's, your parents' relationship. And, I
Hmm.
mean, when it's a family business, or when family are employed and then let go, that's really, really hard. And I mean, it happens a lot. We've all got, you know,
Yeah,
children and, sisters working for us or whatever it is like that. That's just how small businesses develop.
yeah.
Um, were they open about it? Did they talk about it? Or was it this perception that you got because you've made that in your mind? Or was it something that you heard through messaging?
I think it was more so a hindsight thing of the problem wasn't there, and then and it was there in a very big way. It was a very, very destructive time. There was kind of like a huge, it felt like a huge explosion. Everything that I ever kind of saw stable wasn't there anymore in that sense. Because actually, from a professional point of view, that was all I ever aspired to do, which is why I left school at 16. I wanted to run this, what was very successful engineering company at the time. And that, so actually overnight, my kind of ambition went like that as well. So it was such a big impact, and even down to things like property. And because it was engineering, there were assets like big machines. It cost like hundreds of thousands of pounds even at the time. There was so much involved. And of course, when people start acting from a position of fear, and I can see this certainly in hindsight now, bad decisions are made. And I think so many bad decisions were made by me, by everybody within the situation, to be fair.
So, do you think that that's like your earliest memory of kind of clocking what money was about, or do you have anything else a little bit late, earlier on where you learned about, even if it was, even if it was pocket money or something your grandparents gave you?
Oh yeah, but probably my earliest memory was just because ice cream. But even though an ice cream is expensive, when the ice cream van used to come round, my pap used to tell me it was the faggot and pea van. So I didn't want faggots. I wanted ice cream. So it really put me off. Or if you went to the chippy, it was like they only had sausages, no fish, because fish is really expensive even then. Yeah, so I guess it's all food related. You can understand why I'm 6'4", 24 stone. But I think I think interesting. I was having this conversation yesterday with somebody that generationally. So I'm now 47. So back in the day, and I'm not a mathematician, I can't even say when that was, but back in the day, I think my generation were kind of taught to not ask about money. We were quite different in that sense that don't ask your uncle how much his new car is. Don't ask how much people earn, how much this is, and how much their house is. And so actually, it kind of treats it like a taboo or stigma right from the start. So our relationship with money is really on the acquisition of material things. So I would walk around the local shopping centre with my friends, looking at the auto traders, wondering what cars we were going to get when we were younger. So it was always that pursuit of material things because we had no relationship with money in that sense because we were told not to ask about this stuff. Easy come, easy go. And I think that's the one that stuck with me even through all of those challenges.
I think that taboo still, I don't even think it was in back in the day. I think it's still prevalent that we're, how often do we have a conversation with friends about the value of, maybe if someone said they got a raise, well, how much is that? Like, do they just say, well,
It's
I've
true.
got a promotion, right? They just say I've got a promotion. You don't very often have that conversation of like, what does that mean? And I think, yeah, running business, we're maybe a bit more comfortable about talking about money. We talk to our accountant about money. We talk to, maybe peers about how the business is doing. But
Yeah.
I still think that's quite high. Most of the time with people, we're still doing quite high level stuff. It's not, there is a lot of taboo still about talking about those things.
There is, and there's a lot of ego as well. I mean, like you said, if depending on who you speak to, and again, this is kind of the reason I was really excited about today is because I wanted to, again, I said to you, having this open on this conversation, not from a, oh, this is great, I've got all of my stuff nailed, and this is very successful, this is this, and I wanted to actually give people the reality because very often people will look at yourself and me and the people that are out there invisible and by the social definition successful in that sense, they think, hallelujah, they've got that stuff nailed, they're okay. Actually, everyone's got their challenges. And I think that's really important to kind of showcase that.
Absolutely. And even at the weekend I was traveling up north, seeing some friends, and we were talking about their business and how their business was doing. And, then got me reflecting on my business. And I'm sure you, Nick, feel the same. It's like the last 3 years I've been I don't want to swear, pretty difficult.
Mm.
You know, and we're still here and we're still, you know, doing everything that we're doing. But I don't think anyone listening should think that you know, it's been easy sailing for any business or anybody who's being self-employed in the last 3 years. If everyone's being really honest about it and
Yeah, absolutely.
getting rid of the Instagram vibe, as I would call it.
Yeah.
Like if we're peeling it back, you know, everyone's had to make some pretty tough decisions, and sometimes it's not until you sit back and reflect on it, like I did at the weekend, that you realise that you have had to make those decisions.
Yeah,
You know.
absolutely. I think you're right. I think for me, it felt certainly. Actually, we'll probably come on to this. One of the best feelings I ever had around money was actually when I did my tax return for last year, and it was a record year. But the 2 years before that, as you said, it felt like you were running to stand still, and it felt like, I don't know. I think my natural inclination, anyway. I've never been a natural entrepreneur or a natural business owner. I've been kind of winging this all the way through, still am, to be honest. But my natural inclination is that my career was built being the best second in command I can be. That was kind of my mindset. I was there to support other people in that sense. So there's not one week that goes by where I don't want to press that big red eject button, as much as I love what I do, and go and do something for somebody else. Because it always seems the easier option, but we know that's not the easier option. That's the other thing. It's the grass is always greener, right? But I think that's really important to say that for those 2 years, certainly post-COVID, that emotionally, mentally, and even spiritually, in a sense, that they were the toughest times that I've had in business and also with money, whilst or since that kind of early formative years, to be fair.
Mm-hmm.
Because the pressure is on you. You are your own, you drive the money, your time is your product for me. So I have no product per se. My time is my product. My attendance is my product. This is only the second day back after 3 weeks of being off with a back-to-back chest infection. And again, I knew I had to take a step back, although it did take a doctor to tell me that, because taking your own advice is the hardest thing to do, right? So it did actually take a doctor to say, look, you need to take a step back. But as much as I hated the fact that that kind of fear of missing out and the fear of kind of not having the earning time, as we talk here today, I know absolutely it was the right thing to do. And I know it's going to be okay. And everything will pick up again. It has already in a really good way. But it's a catastrophization element when you have a poor relationship with money. You automatically catastrophize the situation. I liken it to if you lose your mobile phone, you think the world's trying to get hold of you. In reality, nobody's trying to get hold of you. I think it's that kind of feeling, right?
Yeah, and so talk to me a bit about that, because we talked before we started recording about you having to take this time off. I mean, it's a challenge for anyone self-employed, as you say. You know, as soon as that you're not doing that time, you're not getting paid. So I mean, I don't know. You might say, well, that's the only 3 weeks I've had off. But how do you approach like budgeting for things like that? So, you know, we all need a little bit of leave. We all need to take some time off. And when you're self-employed, you've not got anyone paying your holiday pay. So how did that 3 week feel? And did you go, oh, it's okay because I've got this stashed over here?
Hand on heart, no, I don't budget. And I'm being completely honest, and I feel really ashamed even just that kind of stigma of saying that, but it's true that I don't budget. I do wing it. I educationally wing it. I don't live close to the line anymore in that sense. But I don't plan enough. But what it has taught me is that I need to have other things and offerings in the armory which aren't related to my time. And I think that's where these kind of situations, even though I don't deal with it particularly well right now in terms of budgetary wise and stuff, we were okay, absolutely. But this is where I need to create a business which doesn't need to have me in it all of the time. So it's creating a business. And for me, as just dad to a small Shih Tzu, I have no kids. That will be my legacy, actually, is what I do with this business. And I think for me, it's turning that into something which isn't just me. So the answer to your question is, no, I didn't have that buffer per se, but it's okay. Obviously, it would have went on longer. It might have been more of a challenge because I didn't have a plan B in that sense. But it's reinforced that kind of lesson that I need to have more tools in the armory. And actually, that's a really valuable lesson to learn. Oh, yeah, brutal, but it's an important lesson to learn.
Yeah. So I guess that makes, yeah, I mean, I think about it all the time, if I'm the only one kind of, well, we talked about it the other week, what if something happened to me, what would happen to the business? And even though there are
Mm.
plenty of other people helping me run the business, actually the kind of the figurehead position and the giving advice position is mine. So how what would that look like, and what would we have to do? But interestingly, if I am here, I quite often think about that. What other I mean, I know that Catherine Morgan, who talks about all the time.
Yes.
How are we going to create a passive income stream? How are we going to be so that it's not us having to deliver this, or if we are delivering it, we've already recorded it and we're delivering it in a recorded fashion instead of,
Yeah.
face to face. So I guess that's the sort of thing you're talking about.
Yeah, that's certainly one of the avenues. The avenue that I focused on first, because I have huge kind of what's the word, resistance, shall we say, to placing all of my content online right now. I'm working on it with the aid of a coach and a counsellor. But the way that I decided to grow the business was by actually developing a stable of partners who specialise in different things that go and deliver things for me. Because what I found is that culturally, some people like me, and if I go in and speak for them, they want me to do more, but there's only so much that I can do. But they want me to facilitate it for them, or they want me to host or even arrange. So as we speak right now, I have somebody delivering under my company banner a webinar on grief as it stands at the moment, because actually that needs a solution focused approach. That's not me. But they wanted it to be somebody that's culturally aligned with me, somebody that feels like me in that sense, that can deliver what they need. That's kind of the way that I've started to develop Forging People, is by developing a trusted stable of speakers, experts, and professionals that can go and do stuff under my banner in that sense. And that's really been a difficult journey on a personal level, because I have big trust issues generally in life due to a couple of experiences, actually. So it's taught me to not just choose well, but take my time over who I decide to delegate and collaborate with, but also not being afraid to say to people that actually, I don't think this is a great fit. It's not a personal thing. It's just, I don't think this is a great fit culturally. And that's been difficult, because then I have that confrontational thing of having that conversation. And I'm a nice guy. I don't like to say to people that we're not a good fit, but it's the best thing all round in that sense. So what I've found is that I really seem to have attracted the right people at the right time for where we are. And I appreciate it's a really rambling answer. The online stuff certainly will come. I do believe what Catherine shares about passive income, absolutely true. I do need to do that. But I wanted to make sure, maybe it's a natural networker in me, I don't know, that I wanted to make sure that I did the people thing first.
I was going to say you're a people person. It makes sense, and
Yeah.
I think, and that's your brand, right, Nick? So you've got those people have to be aligned. They have to be the right people to represent you. Do they have to wear a cap?
No, but Catherine did at the Next Gen conference, actually. So Catherine did
actually. I saw her online.
Yeah. So it's no, we don't have to wear a cap. But I don't tell people what to wear. But I think it's just a case of just, they feel like my crew, and I like that. And the great thing is, as new opportunities come up, that I then look for new experts in that field. So it keeps things really varied as well. For me, there's also a paying it forward element of a lot of the people that I partner with are not as advanced, shall we say, or far along into their either speaking career or professional career. So it kind of gives people that experience of working with real live audiences as well, and to showcase just how brilliant they are. So there's quite a nice circle approach to this, that it just becomes a really nice pay it forward element, and you can use your business to do that.
Yeah. So we talked a little bit about budgeting, which feels like maybe that's not really happening.
No,
but that's fine.
not.
I mean, everyone's got a different way of handling things, and some people would say, "Well, my business plan is my budgeting, and I know what I've got to make, and that's what I'm doing." Everyone's different. But what about
hand on heart? Though, I'm sorry, I must say, hand on heart.
Okay.
My wife does manage most of the personal expenses really well enough that I don't actually see what happens. The only bits that I do focus on is the business. So I think if I had to do it myself for any reason, then I would be a lot better. But I think it's because I've just got the business that tends to be the bit that I focus on, if that makes sense.
Well, and if she's got the skill set to do the budgeting, then you need to leave her to
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
So, what about you spoke a little bit about the fact that early on, your relationship was pretty toxic with money, and that it's not
Mm.
probably the healthiest. What about debt and debt management? What's your thought? I mean, what's your experience of it, and what's your view on how you handle debt now?
How I handle things now is very different. I make sure that I'm staying well on top of these things now. For a long time during self-employment, so this is going back 8 years ago since I've been fully self-employed. I would say I spent the first 4 or 5 years just getting up to zero, getting back to a point where I was in a really kind of neutral state in that sense, after spending most of my life in not a good state. And since then, it's been a lot better. I think for me, how I've dealt with it is kind of how I dealt with most things, including mental illness and recovery and alcohol and that kind of stuff, is to kind of be honest about it and to be vulnerable about it. So even if you can't change the situation, you can understand where you are. So as an example, and again, I don't tend to share this, but I think it's an important point to make. My first big investment was in flat and a property in Bristol, and this was back in the days when they would give credit to anybody, i.e. me, and I was very, very young, in my teens, late teens still, and I mean at the time it was what I say only, but it was like £47,000. So if I kept it, I would have been in mid. But there we go. But I got to a point where I got about 6 or 7 months in and realised I'm just way, way over my head here. I cannot afford to do this. It's only getting worse. So I literally walked the keys up to the Halifax in the shopping centre and said, "Here you go." It's kind of a voluntary repossession. And not only did it save me from going down a whole sticky mess with them chasing me and pursuing it and everything else, also came out with a small win as well, which at least allowed me that time to kind of set myself straight again. But that's kind of where it started to be. Until that point, really, I guess, up until maybe 15 years ago when I first started to kind of really wrap my head around this, it was always a feast and famine thing. If I had money, I'll go and enjoy it. And if I didn't, then if I couldn't get credit, it's a really weird relationship with money. But it was fueled by this kind of toxic nature that I saw money as a bad thing. So actually I didn't really want to sit around too much either, which I know makes no sense at all. And I think, especially now with my 46-year-old, like in a good place mindset, I can understand that was absolutely the wrong mindset to have. But then again, there was a lot of very dubious distraction techniques I was taking at the time, which I know were also not healthy too. And that's why, for example, I've not drunk now, 6, 7 years. Because you kind of pursue distance, I guess. Does that make sense? You kind of try and... Well, it's a distraction technique, essentially. It's not a healthy one, but it's an effective one to an extent.
It's really interesting what you said about, because money has this kind of had this toxic thing that you didn't really want it. And so the easiest, the way that you were going about that was just by spending it on stuff, be it whatever that is.
Yeah.
I think that there is this thing now, and I hear it more and more and more from people as well post-COVID, about like how we balance, well, I'm not going to worry about the future because, da 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 da. I'm just going to enjoy what I've got. I'll let money flow in and out. I hear that quite often, which, the financial planner in me is like screaming and very uncomfortable about it. But I get it, because we all lived through that scary thing, and we, maybe knew people who died, or and we have it all the time. Someone will think that person didn't get to live their life the way they wanted to because all they did was work to worry about their pension, and getting that balance is really important. But given that before you were just sort of like, right, well, I don't. How's that balance working now? How are you working on that, with your wife and as your little family unit with,
Yeah.
now?
The balance is good now. I think the balance to start with, I think when I went self-employed, that was the last time that we kind of felt insecure in that sense, because obviously you come away from the perceived security of employment into the realms of I'm going to be a professional speaker. You what? And as that went on, and as that became more successful, actually it's gone over and above obviously what was kind of working towards before. So now we're in a really, really good place. But again, it's just, I think maybe looking back at, if you looked at my professional CV, for example, the most turbulent time I was working in the pub trade. Not a great place to work in a turbulent time, I'll be honest with you. So I was managing pubs and clubs and all these different things. So that the environment didn't lend itself to a stability. And then when I came away from the pub trade and I worked in a 9 to 5 job again, that over the period of that 14 years I was with the company, actually that's where the stability started to come, because I started to have this kind of routine of stability, routine in a healthy way. I need to be careful with routine with OCD, but routine in a healthy way. And then say into that, then my relationship started, and then it kind of improved from there with stability. I think that there's a lot of pressure, as I'm sure you'll understand, when you are the business owner or the entrepreneur or the self-employed person. So you cannot fail to have an emotional reaction to the small wins and the small losses. So I need to be very mindful of going back into that feast and famine mode of celebrating everything like it was like a huge win, but then really beating myself up if that event postpones, or is that kind of thing. So I think it's the emotional thing that I focus on more now in terms of budgeting than the actual money, because the money's there and we're okay. So that's kind of where I am at the minute. I focus more on the emotional side of things, making sure that I'm regulating my emotion and my energy to make sure the business flows well and continues to flow well, because that's going to be the way forward for whatever we want to do now.
And it is absolutely really important, especially if you're one of those people who have those emotional triggers with money. You know, it be that, as you say, a celebration and of a win, or the reverse. You know, I think many people will relate to you know, the way, if they really think about the way they spend money, that typically, you know, it follows an emotional pattern. You know, as you go through it.
Mm. I
But
think
don't
it's
think we
also
talk about it enough, really. We don't talk
no,
about it enough, definitely.
and we should, because I think if you look at, I mentioned weight earlier on, and kind of, so even relationship with food has an impact with money, that if money is there, actually is a lot easier to take easy options or to spend more, because money isn't an issue. You don't tend to then budget your diet, so it has an impact. Well, I certainly don't anyway. So you just go for that kind of easy option. And I think for me, it has an impact on us emotionally. I think that's the bit that I've tried to focus on since getting to know yourself and people like the Institute for Financial Wellbeing, is to bring that element of tying up the human experience of people that don't know anything about money with you guys that are brilliant at what you do, so that we get a more 4D experience. And I think this is where your podcast is really performing a real and powerful duty for people, to give people the reality and the humanity of the experience of money. Because a lot of the kind of stuff we see is like BS and bluster. That you have entrepreneurs shouting from the roof that they got all this. I have people telling me all the time that they're really successful, and that's fantastic. But I also know people that know people, and they're not that successful. And they tell me that they get so many £1,000 for a gig. They don't get so many £1,000 for a gig, so we have the same. It's that kind of thing. I just wish people would just kind of have that honesty and tell the truth and be prepared to be a little bit more vulnerable, because I think it helps everybody. If you can see somebody who is perceived as successful openly saying that this is still a real challenge, for me, that's far more appealing than somebody's got it nailed. I'll get off my soapbox now. I did nearly go a bit ranty then.
Yeah, well, no, and I completely agree. And I actually, you know, I know that, you know, we know one another through Next Gen mainly, but the work that Next Gen planners do around just creating like that honest space for people who are, you know, they're trying to get younger people to run businesses, but they're also being really honest. Like, this is not great. Like, this is hard work, you know,
Yeah.
and all of those reasons, you know, they're all kind of going, yeah, there's great things to happen if you run your own business, but you're also going to take on an awful lot, and you're going to, they're going to be those pressure points and things that are really hard, a really hard slog. And I think that's the joy of it. But I used to go and do networking with our profession, and everyone would just be like, yeah, business is great, and da, 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 da. And it's that kind of like false thing of just like, you don't have to tell me that. I'm not, that's, we're all still here, we're all still standing. That's probably like
Yeah.
good enough for most people,
Yeah.
to be honest, and still
Absolutely.
managing to have nice times with our family, hopefully, and maybe get a bit of time off. Like, that's what most people's desire wants to is. And I think that thankfully we are now starting to break that down and be that little bit more honest about stuff.
Absolutely. I think this for me is the closest alignment between your space and my space, the mental health and financial space, is that mental health is very similar. That I'm okay, I'm good, and we don't reach out for help, we don't engage, we don't even know how to reach out for help, have better conversations around this stuff. This for me is the biggest commonality between the spaces, is that the ability is to have better conversations around mental health, around money, but also having a playbook of how you get help when you need help. And for me, it has to be said, unless you're showing the world your true self, how do you expect the world to show up on your terms and to actually offer you the help that you need? If by me being honest about my challenges, I have so many people that will step up and offer me help. If I'm only open, but if I don't share those challenges, they don't offer help, because how can I help somebody that doesn't tell them they got a problem?
And it's a really big problem, right, Nick? Part of the reason why I wanted to
Mm.
do, have these conversations, to do the Men's Month, is because the statistics are pretty scary about, male suicide, mental
Absolutely.
health challenges. I know that also happens with women, but we also know that the statistics are kind of talking for themselves right now.
Yeah.
So from a perspective of when you're doing your work, and especially I know your connection with the Institute of Financial Wellbeing, can you just
Hmm.
talk to me a little bit about why you think it's, what is it that's triggering that when we think about financial well-being, that kind of, it feels like it spirals just so quickly for people. So in your experience, what's some of the key things that maybe, I don't know, maybe people need to look out for people,
Sure.
or people who are struggling need to know, what they should say, how they can reach out to people?
Yeah. I think for me, financial well-being in itself is a very subjective term. It means different things to different people. So I think one of the best things to do is to work out actually what does that mean to you. So financial well-being to me equals peace of mind, and that's where it links with the mental health stuff. So if somebody is going through a challenge, that we need to find out where can that, if people are not opening up about these things, where will that challenge show through? So if you look at things like accountants and bookkeepers actually see the facts and figures of a situation, you look at coaches, you look at, well, absolutely counselors, but closest advisors, trainers, those kind of people that work closely with people. I think for me, it's the ability to ask better questions and not being afraid to ask questions. You hear this a lot, and I think certainly, again, avoiding the soapbox, but it's absolutely true. I think fueled by cancel culture, we're losing the ability to ask questions of people. If we don't understand something, if we're looking out for somebody, we're so afraid of asking the wrong thing or saying the wrong thing. Yesterday, I did a webinar with Charlotte Phillips Lynn, who you know, and also a lady called Gamu Matarira, who is an African lady. We're talking about belonging and inclusion. And the general agreement was from us and from the audience is this is absolutely true. If we don't understand something about money in this context, we don't want to ask. If we don't understand about where somebody is, how somebody is feeling, we don't ask. A simple "How are you doing?" may work. Certainly with blokes, that's kind of the line that we take, very casual, very informal. But I think maybe also enhanced by remote working, hybrid working, it's it's given a little bit of distance now. We don't necessarily pick up on the signs and triggers from people about where they are. One of the best pieces of advice, and I must give credit to one of my lead coaches, Zoe Thompson, on this. Zoe says that when she's working with remote teams, asking the team manager or the leader or the client in this example to actually say to somebody, look, as we're not together, can you tell me how you sound or how you look when you're good? And then what about when you're not so good? How do you look then? How do you sound then? So actually you can start to pick, it's a really nice, informal, friendly way of picking up on the signs and triggers. So actually if somebody comes on a Zoom call and goes, kind of, oh my, you kind of, I know that's kind of a more of a throwaway thing, but it's true. I think if we can give people those kind of signs of people to look out for, it all comes down to two things, and that's trust and rapport all the time. If we build trust and rapport with people, they will share everything with us. So in your space as financial planners, if people trust you with their money, they'll trust you with everything if you have trust and rapport with them. And I guarantee, I know this of you, because it's just a wonderful person you are. Because of how you work professionally, people will share everything with you. They don't draw the line at professional matters. They will share things about their personal lives, about their challenges, about their emotional situation, about their mental situation. So for me, the biggest thing is don't ask questions and focus only on building trust and rapport with people. And as long as you've provided an open dialogue, an open space to have that dialogue, you've done everything that you can. We cannot fix anybody, let alone everybody. But also nor should we hide. I think it's just a case of asking better questions and building trust and rapport.
And sorry, I've got a funny frog in my throat.
Okay, I've had it for 3 weeks. Welcome to the
club. I'll get them to edit that out. About, I mean, and with your, I mean, it's a bit of a hard one because I was going to ask this question, but obviously your job is now to talk about this kind of stuff, to talk about your lived experience of mental health. And that must have a knock-on effect to your friends, your family, because they know that you're going to be there to kind of, well, at least they know that's what you do. So people talk a little bit more freely. And it's like with me, you know, people will just start, you know, family will just say, what about this? Because they know that I know what this, I turned up at someone's house and they said, I've got a pension statement. I need you to look at, Gretchen. I have no idea what this is, you know, and can I get it to pay off the mortgage? That kind of, you know, those are the sorts of things. But, you know, I guess, for you, that's okay in that mental health space. But about money, do you talk about money now, you know, with friends and family? Is that something that you think is something that you do, or is still quite taboo, really?
Actually, you'll be surprised. People don't talk to me about mental health in my personal life. It's really weird. And I think this aligns with certainly the stigma. And to answer your question directly before I completely forget, is I don't talk about money too much. It's really nice to have this kind of conversation with you and obviously your audience, but mainly because there's no need to. I guess if there's holiday or something like that, we talk about money, if we're going out for a meal, to work money, but that's kind of where it ends, really. It's the functionality of it, really. But I think certainly when it comes to people talking to me, knowing what they do, you may be actually really surprised, maybe not, that people don't talk to me about stuff that are people that are close to me. And I think that there's something in that if you've ever tried to help somebody that's really close to you, it's near on impossible because the context is different. They don't see you as potential solution. They don't see you as help. They just see you as big Nick. That's kind of the thing. So it's quite nice that way, that actually it gives me downtime and allows me some headspace to recharge. But there's also a really powerful thing in that for anybody who's listening or watching this right now, that if you're trying to help somebody through a challenge and you're really close to them, great intention, but it's near on impossible to help them directly. That's why it's important to get people to professional help and to signpost people. And signposting is essentially what I do as a job. So I signpost people to help and solutions, whether it's internally or externally. But it's true, our relationship is very different with the people that are closest to us. I remember recently being on tour for about 2 or 3 weeks, and I come home and Tula, my dog, was jumping all over me. It's you're amazing, I've seen you in 2 or 3 weeks. My wife went, all right. So it's kind of like context is everything. So I think that we need to understand what role we play in people's lives. I think the great thing about client relationships, for example, is you do have that natural relationship boundary in a sense. You may cross over with trust and rapport, but you know why each other are there in that sense. And I think we need to understand that the closer we are, those boundaries start there.
Yeah,
And I'm quite grateful for
absolutely.
that in my own personal life, because I think it does give me break from what I do, because it is a heavy space to work in sometimes. Again, working in the prison system with victims of domestic abuse, with uh, students who've had very poor upbringings, and I mean, that's not all of what I do, but that can be a big part, and it does take a toll on your own energy as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we've talked about it before. I think, all the financial advisors, financial planning can also be quite emotionally draining, because
Absolutely.
for that reason that they come, a
Mm.
client will come in and tell you everything, and some of those things sometimes not that easy, to kind of handle
But it's kind
and
of,
to help them through that. Those are big
it
challenges.
is. It's a really twisted game of pass and parcel, because for us, money uneducated people, me especially, I'm probably one extreme, but we have this anxiety around our business and our money and how it looks and our wealth and our planning. And all we want to do is to take it off of our shoulders and put it onto yours. And then our job's done. So we feel a lot lighter. Where do you go with that? And I think that's why it's so important that to be selfish in that sense, to protect your own self care first. But we're not great at being selfish. I think culturally and generationally, we're brought up to not to be good with this stuff. That you feel guilty when you put yourself before anything, but you need to do that. You need to put yourself first.
Yeah, and I do think that's getting slightly easier in society. I think, and
I hope so.
especially in the professional environment, we acknowledge that everyone needs rest and recuperation and carving out time. And let's face it, we know that COVID did some really bad things, but it did some great stuff, because people
Mhm.
did reflect on things and did get a better balance and all of those things. So
Absolutely.
right. So we're going to try and round up, Nick, because I feel we probably need to. But so I want to say, so earlier you mentioned something. You said, one of the really good feelings you had around money was with your accounts, last year and record. So
Yeah.
I must say congratulations, because I
Thank
know
you.
how good it feels when you get to that, and especially after 2 years of treading water, that feels,
Yeah,
I'm sure, felt pretty amazing.
it did.
Yeah. Um, but we'll finish on the kind of financial freedom thing question.
Okay.
So, what does financial freedom, mean? Or I don't know. Sometimes I think it's a feeling, so it could be feel, mean, look like to you, however you want to explain it.
Yeah, I think financial freedom to me would be weirdly not to be a mad millionaire. I worked with enough mad millionaires to realize they're not really happy as a generalism. I'm sure there's a lot of happy mad millionaires as well. But for me, it's peace of mind. I think it's just to be able to wake up in the morning knowing that no one's chasing you, that you're on top of everything, that you have money in reserve, that you can do the holidays, you can do everything that you want in a really peaceful way. Because I think for me, I certainly found with running a business, even the process of invoicing, even the process of chasing money, really kind of creates some anxiety in me, because I feel really uncomfortable. Even to the extent now where a lot of the time, if I'm quoting for business, I've had to do it from a third party email address, like a team app kind of address, because weirdly it felt more comfortable doing it that way. So for me, it's actually the increasing peace of mind and confidence that it can bring you. It's not actually about what you buy or what you. It's just the peace of mind of knowing that actually my little corner of the world's covered and I'm good. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that. I think, and I think that the concept of financial freedom is changing,
Mm,
and has changed already. Um,
yeah, absolutely.
over the years, and it's different for everyone. Absolutely. So it's always good to end on that. So thank you very much,
You're welcome.
and thanks for sharing today.
You're very welcome. It's been very therapeutic. I'm coming back.
Well, I really appreciate your time, and well, I will speak to you again anyway, but I know that everyone will really enjoy it, so thank you so much.
Thanks, Gretchen. Thanks, everybody. Take care.